Okay, so in the last podcast we looked a little bit about the content of the poem Alaska, at the tone of voice, really what the poem is about, and we've been through the first and the second section, the turn near the middle of the poem. Let's look a little bit about the form and the structure. When we talk about form and structure, we talk about how the words are laid out on the page. We don't necessarily talk about the words themselves, but the choice the poet has made in laying them out in the way that he or she has laid them out. Remember, when you talk about poetry, it's very, very important that you don't just talk about the words, you don't just talk about the language, you also talk about the way in which the words are laid out on the page. And you can see straight away here there's a regularity, there's an order to this poem. Each stanza, please use the word stanza, S-T-A-N-Z-A, and not verse, and certainly not paragraph. That'll be one thing that really winds an examiner up. It certainly winds me up when people refer to poems as having paragraphs. They don't. Poems have stanzas and lines. They don't have sentences, they have lines. So please do use, and they're not writers, they're poets. You can tell I get wound up about this, can't you? You can probably tell by my tone of voice. Do use the right terms, do use the right language. So you can see that each of these stanzas is 5 lines in length. Doesn't seem to be much order to it really, because actually the lines are broke. You might get a crown prince rattling round his icy palace. Well, why on earth is there a break there? On my dress shirt, the fire left on all night. Why on earth is there a break there? Has he only done it really to make the poem look a little bit neat because it's 5 line stanzas? No, I don't think so. Let's have a look at the stanza breaks in more detail. Let's look at the crown prince rattling. Crown prince rattling round his icy palace. There's a separation between rattling and round. Why does the poet do that? Maybe suggesting a sense of separation between him and the environment, him and his home. Does he feel distant from his home now? Maybe that's what it is. Brand of a steam iron on my dress shirt, the fire left on all night. There's a separation there. These are separate incidents. The only time I came within a mile of missing you. There's a sense of mile finishing and then missing you starting the next stanza, again showing the separation between him and his partner. Hand in hand, pause, his and hers, and I think in that pause we get him beginning to think. Do look at pauses. Do look very carefully at when a poet makes you pause, either through punctuation or through a stanza break. That's what it's called. Between the line between the 2 stanzas is a stanza break. Because within punctuation and stanza breaks, often the poet forces you to pause, and in that pause is often quite a lot of meaning. You'll see that as we look at some of the other poetry, that often Simon Armitage deliberately makes the reader pause, because maybe he wants the reader to think. In this case, the narrator, the person speaking, is thinking. So there are line breaks, stanza breaks for a reason. What else? Well, how about looking at the language in a little bit more detail? Look at the repetition. Girl, you must see me. Girl, you must picture me. Girl, all the way through. Girl, you should see yourself. There's an aggression there, isn't there? Girl, you should see yourself. The word girl as well, it's almost slightly patronising. That he's talking to her as if she's a little girl. Maybe that was half the problem. Maybe he treated her like a little girl. Maybe he didn't allow her to grow up. So Armitage might be hinting at the reasons behind the woman leaving without the narrator themselves understanding. Maybe the whole reason she left him was because he was patronising. Maybe the whole reason she left him was because he was arrogant, conceited, self-assured. Maybe he just didn't treat her very well. And that does, we do get a sense of that coming through the poem. So the language itself, there is an aggression to it. There's a kind of a sarcasm to the tone of voice, and I think that repetition of the girl suggests that. Do look for repetition when you analyse poetry. Look for why a poet might repeat a particular word or phrase. So I hope that's been useful. Again, just really focus with this poem on how the content of the poem and the tone of the poem do often seem to be at odds with one another.